everybody, so these are the only figures that I've ever opened, the only figures that I have that are loose, and these are pretty much from my childhood, but there's a story pretty much behind each and every one of them, so this is going to be a lot of fun explaining these figures to you. The first ever figures that I got as a kid were Scott Hall and Wolfpack Sting. Now, I guess these are really significant because, I mean, they're old. I mean, look at the way that they're built. I mean, these are like classic um, wrestling figures, and I've always been a WWE fan, even when I first started watching wrestling back in 1996 when I used to watch Superstars in the morning. I was always a WWF fan, but nobody could doubt WCW and how popular they were and how popular their superstars were. So on a KB toy shelf, if anybody remembers KB Toys, there was a two-pack of Scott Hall and Wolfpack Sting, and I got these two figures along with a WCW ring. Very cool, and I've always kept these figures in my collection. I'll never get rid of them because they're the first two figures that I've ever had. So there's some historical significance, personal historical significance to that. And then we move on to what used to be the old style WWF figures. The first one that I got out of that group was Al Snow, and I thought he was cool because, you know, at the time in the company, he was just different. He was kind of psycho, a little bit crazy. He had the mannequin head, and I thought he was cool, so I picked him up. He was the third figure that I had ever had at that point. And then came along Road Dogg Jesse James. I don't think that I purchased that one. I believe that this was a friend's figure, and he may have left it in my pile, and I've always held on to it. The same with Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Triple H. This figure is a lot older than, you know, all of these figures that I have, because he changed from Hunter Hearst Helmsley at some point in 1998, I want to say, is when he switched over from Hunter Hearst Helmsley to Triple H. Not too long after DX began, but this is one of the older style figures. And then I have Dan the Beast Severn. Nothing special about him. I didn't like him when he was in the company, and I still don't like him today. But I mean, I did have him. I didn't have a Ken Shamrock of my own, so at least I had a Dan Severn. The only two other WCW figures that I had were Conan, who, I mean, he was pretty cool in his time. But you can see how the figures changed over the years from WCW. I mean, from the difference in, you know, Sting and Hall versus Conan, their figures were getting a lot nicer, and I had to get one. So I picked up Conan, and then later on, also picked up Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner. And this is actually my favorite WCW figure. I mean, out of the ones that I had, I didn't have many. So out of the four, this was my favorite Scott Steiner figure. Always liked the Big Papa Pump persona. Thought it was really cool. I mean, he's always been a star to me, even though he could barely move in the ring. He's always been the man to me. Very, very cool. And now moving along to my WWF action figures. I'm going to just come a bit lower so you guys can see a little bit more. So the first one is Steve Blackman. And Steve Blackman was always pretty cool to me. He didn't have a lot of charisma, but he was a pretty cool talent. He made for a cool figure. And then next up, we have Crash Holly. Now, the thing about Crash Holly is that I've always liked Crash. Not a big fan of hardcore, but always a big fan of Crash Holly. And mainly because of his ring attire. I mean, he wore like a biker style short, but I always liked the design and the colors of his outfits. And he was like an underdog, so I thought he was cool. And mind you, these are the only two WWF figures that don't have the trash talking logos on their feet. Actually, Crash does. It's just all black. If you see those two squares on the bottom of their feet, that means that they work with the trash talking stages and the trash talking rings that WWF used to release back in, I want to say 99, 2000, where every figure had like a particular catchphrase or something that they would say if they stepped onto that trash talking receiver. Moving along, we have the updated Triple H. Triple H, as he had just broken away from D-Generation X and joined the corporation. Pretty cool figure. Most of these figures have been through a lot over the years, but that was my first, major Triple H figure. Moving on, I had Kane. Nothing really significant. It doesn't even really look like Kane, other than the attire, obviously. Give it right away. But he was always the big red monster for me, big red machine back then. Of course, standing with his back to everybody is Y2J, Chris Jericho. Never had a Jericho figure of my own where he had his regular attire. I always just had this one. So I really used him for mainly promos, not a lot to do in the ring, because he wasn't wearing actual like ring attire. And when you take his jacket off, the sleeves are still there. So I'm kind of a perfectionist when it comes to like playing with or when I used to play with my wrestling figures and have shows and stuff. If they weren't wearing ring attire, they couldn't have matches. So Jericho didn't really fight in many matches. A couple backstage brawls, but that's about it. Next up is the Big Boss Man. Now, I've always been a Big Boss Man fan, even when, he used to wear the typical, like, blue collar shirt. And then he turned to Corporation Boss Man and started wearing the black. He was still cool to me. I think the figures are very, very nicely done. They put a lot of detail into it for it to be a figure from, 1999, 2000. I thought it was a really great job on the Big Boss Man, and it looks like him, which matters to me. Matters a lot. Next figure I have is Edge. Now, let me let you guys in on a little something. Edge is my favorite wrestler of all time. I grew up with him. Edge and Christian were my favorite tag team and still is of all time. And Edge is my favorite wrestler of all time. Hands down, Edge is the man. And this figure came with an actual pair of glasses that I left in the package on Christmas Day and threw it in the trash. So I always kick myself for not saving those glasses. But that's my Edge figure, and that's one of my favorites. Moving on to Ministry Undertaker. This is my favorite Undertaker. Hands down, Ministry Undertaker is the best Undertaker that there ever could have been. I wish I would have been able to see him as Ministry Undertaker live, but I didn't go to my first event until 1999, and Undertaker was already injured. Actually, I'm sorry, 2000. January of 2000, Undertaker was hurt, and he returned at Judgment Day of 2000, so I missed Ministry Undertaker, but he is by far the best version of The Undertaker. Had a lot of Brothers of Destruction matches with Undertaker and Kane, and a lot of matches with them against each other also. I was really excited when I got my Badass Billy Gunn figure. I always figured that his tights were always cool with the kisses on it. He just stood out to me in DX. I mean, X-Pac was my favorite, even though X-Pac was hated by many. Billy Gunn was easily my second favorite. I mean, he had everything to me. He could cut a promo, he could wrestle, he could be intense, he could be a babyface. I just felt like Billy Gunn was the man back then. Too bad he never won a world championship. Also, Whoops. Guys, is Test. Another one of my favorites from the Attitude Era. I started watching wrestling in 1996. I watched Superstars. I got out of wrestling for a little bit, and then I started watching Shotgun Saturday Night in 1998, around the time where Stone Cold Steve Austin faced The Undertaker at SummerSlam, and I was a huge Test fan. Test from the Corporation, huge Test fan. And then after he broke away from the Corporation and went out on his own and started dating Stephanie, I was always a Test fan up until he left the company on the first go around. Once he came back, I kind of fell out of favor with him. But, I'll always remember Test for being, that big, tall, athletic guy with that big boot and that flying elbow. You were a great talent. And then my last loose figure is, of course, one of the Hardy Boys. It's Jeff Hardy. I like the Hardy Boys as a team back then. I thought they were very athletic. Always thought Edge and Christian were a little bit better, but Jeff pretty much had it all. And Matt did too, but Jeff just had star written all over him. And as far as all of my figures go, I think Jeff, this is probably my favorite of all the figures that I have. I just like the way that it's made, the way it's put together, and the way that it looks. It looks just like Jeff Hardy. There's no mistaking that is Jeff Hardy. So that's the last figure in my loose figure collection. I don't have many loose. I keep all the rest of them in packages. And if I don't have them in packages, I either lost them as a kid or gave them away to other friends as a kid. But as always, like, subscribe, comment, hit me up on Twitter, check me out on Twitch, wherever you can. Thanks for watching once again. This is NT Certified. I appreciate all you guys, and you have a great afternoon.